The 9 different Bitcoin charts we're going to be looking at today have just started flashing some very interesting signals that they have not shown for over 311 days since September 2023, when Bitcoin was around $26,000. So we're going to be looking at these 9 different charts today. We're also going to be looking at a new tweet thread from Willy Woo, who is on the thumbnail of today's video, talking about the difference of the paper Bitcoin markets and how we have seen this new era for paper Bitcoin markets since 2020, when Bitcoin started actually leaving the exchanges. So we're going to get to that in a moment, but I want to first actually look at what's different and why we're starting to see some very interesting signals pop up in the Bitcoin space. So this is the Mayer multiple chart. You guys can see 2 very interesting circles on this chart. So the last circle, the first circle on the left-hand side of the chart, is actually pointing towards a period of time way back in September 2023, okay? And at the time, Bitcoin was beginning to become oversold in September 2023. The reason for this was because Bitcoin had chopped sideways for 185 days. So we can see by this chart that I made up before coming on the live stream, Bitcoin chopped sideways for 185 days between $24,000 and $31,000 last year, between March and October. This is interesting because at the time, most people thought Bitcoin was dead, okay? Bitcoin had bounced off $16,000. It had bounced up to $31,000. And everybody in the Bitcoin space who was a technical analyst, they're all saying, oh, this is a dead cat bounce. Bitcoin's going to $12,000. The fact that it's consolidating for so long is a sign of weakness. We are 100% sure Bitcoin's going lower. This was the sentiment in the space only 18 months ago. But what I think is pretty interesting about this chart is this was just a consolidation period, and Bitcoin ripped higher in the next 6 to 12 months. And now, again, I don't know what's happening with Bitcoin in the short term, but maybe this is another consolidation period. So I kind of said in this tweet, hey, Bitcoin's been chopping around sideways for 106 days. Is history repeating itself? Now, I tweeted this out because I think just because Bitcoin's going sideways, it's not a bad thing. This happens in bull markets, and this is the point of the chart that I wanted to show you guys. Bitcoin has to go sideways for a long amount of time if it's going to rip higher in the future. Okay, this is just how markets work. They don't go up in a straight line until we see a God candle. Now, again, I'm not saying God candles are never going to happen. Eventually, they will, and they will break all of these models and all of these indicators and all of these other metrics I'm about to show you guys in a moment, like the Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index. Now, when we do see Godzilla enter the room, as Michael Saylor puts it, we are going to see all of these models break, and Bitcoin's going to look like it's oversold for an extended period of time. But this is another metric and another chart that's showing that Bitcoin is more oversold today than it was in September 2023. The last time we were this oversold, Bitcoin was at $23,000. Okay, so again, everybody's so bearish on Bitcoin right now, but again, let's just remember where we are. We're at $60,000 a coin, $62,000 a coin. I don't know the price of where it is today, but again, and everybody's max bearish. Okay, so this is interesting. What we're seeing today, we haven't seen this data since September 2023. Here's the raw data that I used for the tweet, just to show you guys that this is raw, this is live, this is real data. I'm not using old charts. So now something else that's interesting is the RSI. It's the most oversold since, once again, September 2023. We can see the blue line, never been this low since September 2023. So now this is where I want to start talking about Willy Woo. I teased him a little bit. He was on the thumbnail of today's video, and he put out this really interesting little tweet thread a couple of weeks ago now. So he says, ETFs are buying, institutions are buying, who the hell is selling? Okay, this is interesting. So he says, first of all, I'm going to tell you who's selling, the Bitcoin OGs. So this chart is showing you the coin days destroyed. Essentially, all it's showing you is that the old OGs and the people who've been in Bitcoin in a long time, they've taken some profit. And this is very normal to see in the Bitcoin bull market. And typically, again, a lot of people look at this chart and they take this as being a little bit bearish, okay? But have a look at where those orange lines spike. They kind of spike in the middle of a bull market. And Bitcoin typically rallies for another 3 to 6 months after you see the biggest spike in coin days destroyed. Let's zoom in so you guys can see this. We saw this in 2017. It spiked about 3 to 4 months before the peak. Same thing in 2020. Looks like we got a big spike at about $26,000, $27,000 per Bitcoin. We saw the biggest spike happening before $30,000. We all know we continued to rip on to hit $65,000. And then about 6 to 7 months later, we hit $69,000. So again, everybody's getting a little bit scared of this big spike that's just happened when Bitcoin's been consolidating in this range. But this would actually indicate if history is the same and if this model holds up for this cycle, we should expect another 3 to 6 to maybe 3 to 9 months of upside coming. Okay, so this is a chart that Willy shared, but he didn't stop there. He continued on. And now we're going to get into the really, really interesting thesis, so to say, of Willy Woo's tweet thread here. He says, we are now in the modern age of Bitcoin. Paper Bitcoin has flooded the market since 2017, the futures markets. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, it used to be that you had to buy real Bitcoin. So this is underlying Bitcoin. This is spot Bitcoin, okay? But Willy says you can now buy paper Bitcoin. Thus, a no-coiner can sell you that paper Bitcoin. Okay, so he's talking about synthetic Bitcoin. I'm not going to read you the whole tweet thread, but I am going to show you this chart. So this is showing you the Bitcoin inventory on exchanges. So the very bottom line, this very kind of limeish blue-green color, this is showing you the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. Now, we talk about this all the time. This number has only declined for the past 4.5 years. And this is what the chart is showing you. It actually begins in 2020. Very interesting timing that time frame that Willy Woo like to look at here. We can see that this has been trending down since March of 2020, but have a look at the second line. So this is the purple line, and this is showing you that paper Bitcoin actually began to rise in a pretty significant way since 2020, okay? Now, in this tweet, Willy says that the 2022 bear market was dictated by the flood of paper Bitcoin when spot holders didn't really sell, okay? So this is what he's talking about. The very bottom line is this kind of, greenish color. We can see that it only declined all the way through that 2022 bear market, okay? So if you're just looking at coins on exchanges, you can see nobody sold Bitcoin. And, a lot of people might be thinking, why did the price go down? Well, this has to do with the purple line. This is where the selling came from in that 2022 bull market. This is the paper Bitcoin. And a lot of people think, is this price suppression? Well, we're not going to open that can of worms in today's video. We might talk about it in a future one, and we can really do a deep dive on paper Bitcoin and have a look at Willy Woo's models about paper Bitcoin. But I'm going to just conclude with Willy Woo's final tweet. He says, so it's not a great idea to look at solely ETF buying. On-chain data, derivatives data, and technical price action, all of these add to the demand and supply picture. So again, I think this is important because it's telling us that we need to be looking at more things than just Bitcoin on exchanges. Now, speaking of Bitcoin ETFs, we got a new commercial coming out of BlackRock today, and we also had another one coming out of Bitwise. I want to play both of those videos for you guys before we actually get into the last chart I want to show you, which I think could potentially be the most interesting. But I want to show you guys these brand new commercials that dropped. And so again, let's think about things for a moment. Bitcoin chopped sideways for 180 days last year in 2023 after it then pumped from 30K to 70K. Okay, so we had that long consolidation period. Bitcoin's been chopping sideways for over 110 days right now. A lot of people think this is it. This is the top. But again, I'm showing you these videos now because I want you to kind of ask the question. If the world's largest asset manager thinks that Bitcoin has topped and it's going to crash back down to $20,000 or $30,000, would they be investing a lot of time and money into creating these advertisements now after Bitcoin's been chopping sideways for 110 days? I don't know. I'm not so certain of that. Just a question I'm going to let you guys ponder, okay? I'm just the aggregator here. I'm just showing you the timeline of events that I think is interesting. I'm going to show you the first part of this video because I do think it is interesting.
Samara, so great to catch up. It feels like every time we're talking these days, it's a conversation about digital assets. I'm not complaining, though. It's an exciting time.
I totally agree because so much has been happening, whether it's developments in liquidity provision or infrastructure in the ecosystem or public policy. There has been a huge amount happening in digital assets, of course, leading to the launch of Bitcoin ETFs. So Jay, since we launched IBIT this year, What are you and the team hearing from investors?
We've been having great dialogues with investors, from everyone who's new to the digital asset space to those who have been investing in it for a long time. I think the commonality in these conversations is just how convenient Bitcoin ETFs are in bringing access to the space. I'm interested to hear your view of the markets. How is investor participation changing in the space?
So to your point, Jay, access has been the real game changer with ETFs coming into the Bitcoin space, because now investors can access Bitcoin same way they could buy stocks and bonds through a conversation with their advisors or in their online brokerage platform. And so now they can buy Bitcoin in that way with that ETF setup and look at it in their whole portfolios and think about portfolio construction. And that's why I've been so interested in hearing from you on how investors should be thinking about the role of Bitcoin in their portfolios.
I think this is one of the most important questions for investors that are considering digital assets. The reality is, as you know, Bitcoin is a nascent asset. It's only 1/10 of the size of the gold market, and therefore it has high volatility and behaves a bit differently than stocks and bonds. A lot of investors look at it as a potential hedge against geopolitical and monetary risks. Other investors look at it as a way to play future adoption of blockchain technology. In either case, it's important that investors take a measured approach to Bitcoin, considering both the risks and the potential returns of the asset.
That's what I think is the most interesting part of that interview. Did you hear what the chap said? He said Bitcoin kind of does its own thing, okay? Bitcoin's very volatile. It's a little bit different to stocks and bonds, and it kind of behaves in its own way, okay? This is going to be interesting for when we actually look at the last chart that I have prepared for you guys today in a different tweet thread, not from Willy Woo this time. So I just wanted to interrupt and mention that point, because that's kind of, BlackRock is seeding the narrative that Bitcoin's beginning to do its own things, okay? So let's jump back into the last 10 seconds or so of this video.
So that makes tons of sense to me. And actually, because they can now access Bitcoin through an ETF, it actually makes it easier to take that measured approach, because they can see their whole portfolio and look at risk return scenarios with Bitcoin as a part of it.
Exactly.
This has been awesome to talk to you, Jay.
This has been great so much.
Okay, so that's a BlackRock advertisement coming out. I don't think it's the worst advertisement. I think it's pretty good. Good to see we got Austin in the chat. We do have a pretty lively chat. Lightning Larry actually says he's loving this chat on this channel. So thank you, Larry. Thanks for tuning in. Your comments and everyone else's comments make the chat nice and lively. We also got Michael in the comments as well. Good to see everyone. But let's jump straight into this Bitwise advertisement, because I want to try to compare how these big asset managers are, competing against each other. So BlackRock making advertisements on Bitcoin. Okay, they're focusing on Bitcoin. But then we have Bitwise. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. I'm just going to play it for you because it's interesting. Okay, this is a much shorter one, so we're going to watch the whole one of this one and check out some comments about it in a second as well. So check this out.
Big finance. Did you change?
What? No, I'm always like this. You want to hang out? When moon, man.
Do you even know what that means?
No, I do not.
Okay, so very different approach here by Bitwise. They've got a chat with a big blockchain T-shirt on it, and this is because Bitwise is pivoting into the crypto space. And so we can see here by the comments by the Bitcoiners, it's pretty interesting. They really hold Bitwise's feet up to the fire. Which one is the crypto specialist? The guy who knows when moon? Yeah, so, I mean, guys, it's... jokes aside, I think it's interesting that two of the larger ETF issuers are coming out and, they're doing Bitcoin marketing today when Bitcoin has, been chopping sideways for 110 days. Now, as promised, I got one more little piece of data I really want to show you guys. I think it's an interesting tweet. Okay, now this is kind of, again, talking to the theme of today's video. We haven't really seen things like this happen since September 2023. Okay, so this guy's a little bit of an altcoiner, and he claims to have 10 alpha tweets. Now again, a lot of these don't have any alpha in them because they're crypto focused. But I do want to show you guys this one here. So this tweet's an interesting one. The summer lull has happened every single year, even the most bullish years. So this is in the middle of the bull market. Now again, I'm Australian. My Australian friends might be thinking, hang on a minute, Luke, summer is like November, December, January, February. What are you talking about? It's June. Well, we're talking about American summer, okay? America is the home of the capital markets. So their summer is, well, right now, okay? May, June, July, August. That's the hotter months for America. And every single American summer, we can see that Bitcoin and the broader quote unquote market, wouldn't really call it a market, I'd call it a Ponzi. The Ponzi market also kind of cools off a little bit. So in 2017, altcoins got crushed versus Bitcoin in the middle of the year in the American summer. In 2019, we had that $13,000 top and we had a big correction. Okay, this was the correction that we had leading into that March 2020 Bitcoin crash. Okay, most people kind of forget and they remember that Bitcoin crashed from like $7,000 or $8,000 to $4,000 overnight, but Bitcoin had already corrected from $13,000 to $8,000 during that US summer. It was slowly kind of bleeding out and having a correction after ramping from 3K to like 14K in a matter of months in 2018, when most people thought Bitcoin was dead and most people thought Bitcoin was going down to $1,300. Okay, just a reminder, nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin is going in the short term. Absolutely nobody, to the upside or the downside. So again, this was another example of the markets kind of trending sideways and just dying off in the summer, not being very exciting. Same thing happened in 2020. DeFi summer happened because everyone was risk off on major Bitcoin and other altcoins, okay? 2021, we had bearish chop. In 2022, we had the bear market. In 2023, this is what we were talking about earlier. Bitcoin chopped around sideways for 185 days here between March and October. So this is the summer period, okay? This is the US summer period. This is exactly what happened. And this is a bull market, okay? 2023 was one of the best years for Bitcoin, okay? It was, Bitcoin was the best performing asset in 2023. I believe Bitcoin's still the best performing asset of 2024, actually. So again, this is very normal, what we are seeing today with Bitcoin going sideways. And I think that is kind of really what I wanted to point out today, okay? Everybody's so bearish on Bitcoin. Everybody's so bored of Bitcoin. Everybody's over Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, the signal is very clear. When you have a look at the data, this happens every single year, even in Bitcoin bull markets. So Lightning Larry says Bitwise is blockchain dad. A little bit cringy, yes. Great to see Austin in the chat. Pam says hi. I'm sure Pam says hi. And we also have... I lost the chat for a moment. But again, guys, I think that's the signal I want you guys to take away from today's video. Stay up to date with what is happening and keep an eye on the data, okay? Because the data is very clear that, this happens lots of times in Bitcoin bull markets. Very common, very clear, happens all the time, nothing out of the ordinary. I don't think Bitcoin's heading into a bear market. Again, nobody knows what's going to come next and, what exactly Bitcoin is going to do, because Bitcoin's going to surprise people and it is going to break all of these models to the upside. But, I think there will be leading indicators of an event like that happening before it happens. Okay, so if you do want to stay up to date, you can check out our free weekly newsletter. We have a couple of different newsletters. We have the Bitcoin News Weekly, and we also have a deep dive Bitcoin Insights, where we take you deep into the world of on-chain data, derivatives, and what's happening in the sentiment markets. Okay, so again, if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. It will be linked down below in the description. And the only other thing I want to point your attention towards is Bitcoin versus real estate. So yesterday I did a video looking at Bitcoin versus real estate. As you can see, it's the most latest video. We popped it out yesterday, and a lot of people asked me, Luke, what should I buy? Real estate, Bitcoin? What's the best performing asset? Well, I ran the numbers on my scenario, because I got approved for a home loan around 7 years ago in 2018. And then I really started learning a lot more about Bitcoin, and I decided to essentially rip up that home contract and go all in Bitcoin. So I crunched the numbers and I looked at whether that was a good decision or not. And I also looked at how Bitcoin performed against the best performing real estate markets in the world. So this is homes in LA, this is homes in London, homes in Toronto, Canada, the home of the housing bubble. So if you're interested in any of those topics, as you can see, it's linked in the chat, and it's also up on screen right there. And with all that said, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. Another lively live chat. We appreciate all of you guys joining. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you guys in the next live stream.